Good morning and welcome to another episode of Iconic Freedom, the formula. We're setting a standard for accountability of outcomes based on the responsibility of the choices you make. Let each care for self and all will be cared for.
Well, who put them in charge?
Was Lyndon Johnson white or black?
Who put them in charge?
Maybe that'll help you.
Fine. Lyndon Johnson was white.
Thank you.
Okay. But if your argument is that the reason he did it is because of racism, then I disagree. He did it because of
That's not my argument. I just asked you a simple question. Was he white or black? Charlemagne?
And Mr. Elliott.
So one of the things that I thought was interesting about her response is that was not my argument. I just asked if he was white or black. Whether she wants to own it or admit it or not, she's just, again, playing the race card. It really shouldn't matter what a color of a person is, or their ethnicity, or even their gender. I mean, none of that really, their sexuality, none of that matters. If you're having an issue with someone, then you're having an issue with someone. If there's something to be resolved, there's something to be resolved. But again, this particular woman, and you'll see a lot of pundits do this, and it turns out that she is one of these pundits that goes on Fox News. She even admits it at some point, that this is a tactic that they use where they become dismissive and they don't want to be drawn into the conversation again, or they don't want to address it. And especially they don't want to address it if they're incorrect in their reality. But this is her tactic, and this is what people do. So when you're in conversation with people, just know that when they go down this road, they become dismissive. When they're asking questions, they are telling you more than what they're telling you. You don't need to be a forensic detective to be able to know. You're not trying to figure out why they're doing it. You're just trying to understand what they're saying to you. So I don't know why she's doing this. I don't know what her issues are, but I know what she's telling me is that she's coming from a place of racism, her own internal racism. She doesn't have the qualities of accountability, responsibility. She blames other people, and she's looking for people to agree with her. And when they're not, then she becomes agitated, she becomes dismissive, and she gets antagonistic, frankly.
So what do white people do wrong? I'm gonna keep asking you that because I want.
It seems to me rather than deal with what's going on, the pathology that's going on in the inner city, you want to blame. You want me to talk about how bad white people are, which I don't think is a particularly productive thing to do.
Well, I think there's a cause and effect, but if we can't talk about the cause, which I believe is systemic racism and white supremacy, the FBI says.
Well, I just told you if it's systemic racism, please explain to me how it was when America really had systemic racism in 1940. 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. Again, this is during Jim Crow era. My father is from Athens, Georgia, grew up in Jim Crow. My mom is from Huntsville, Alabama, grew up in Jim Crow. 87% of blacks live below the poverty line. This is before Brown versus Board of Education. You did not find these kind of black on black crime.
Probably because we had no
choice. But they still were living
below
below the poverty line, though, sir.
I'm sorry?
You're forgetting the fact that they were still living below the poverty line. You're picking and choosing, saying this was good, but this was bad.
Okay.
The bottom line, they end between the poverty line. But let's move forward.
Can I just add that particular one? So she clearly has grievances. He has grievances. He meaning Charlemagne and that woman. But their grievances are because they don't want to own any responsibility. You never really hear them say that. At one point, I think she tries to use the word accountability, but she doesn't understand what it means. And she's never integrated that, and neither has Charlemagne. Now, Charlemagne wants to talk about cause and effect, but he says, we can't talk about the effect if we don't talk about the cause. But he already has a preconceived ideology that there is white supremacy and systemic racism. Even when Larry turns around and gives him facts and figures, that is not the case. Now, one of the things that gets lost, unfortunately, in that particular exchange is that Larry Elder talks about black on black crime, that during that period, during the war and everything, that there was not as much black on black crime because of the fact that, the family was intact. Now, again, that's his thesis, that's his premise. I disagree with it because each person is responsible for self. Let each care for self, and all will be cared for. Well, if that is the case, and you are developing responsibility and accountability, it shouldn't matter if it's a two-parent family or a one-parent family, and it shouldn't really matter which parent is part of that. The husband or the wife, it doesn't matter. Two dads, two moms, I don't care. It's like if the parents are being responsible and accountable, then we're good. Okay, and then they're teaching that to their kids. But what was addressed and what this woman wants to make it about is about below the poverty line. That was the one thing that she seemed to hang her hat on. And then she tries to pivot again and be dismissive. Now, the fact is that, Larry was talking about the black on black crime and the lack of the family system intact. However, since the 1960s, it is now missing. And that was his point. But her tactic was, again, to be dismissive. A lot of these pundits will do that. You watch these shows that they'll interject their emotional Molotov cocktail, and then they will be dismissive and say, let's just move on. No. And it's really great when you see these people that are going, no, we're going to address what you just said, because you're not going to get away with that. And then they go through it. And then the other person keeps trying to back off from me, well, we don't want to keep, no, we're going to address that, or we're not going to move on because you're a liar, or you don't know what you're talking about, or whatever it is that they want to say. But that's a very interesting tactic. It is so subtle, but it is so powerful, because what it does is it leaves things hanging. Now, if you've got a politician in there that is not good, that does not understand how to manage that, then it's going to look pretty feeble, to be honest. They're going to look like they really don't know how to respond to these things. And in fact, they don't. One person that's really good about that, if you ever get to see her, is Elise Stefanik. She is really amazing. The other one was Harriet, I think it's Hegman is her last name. She is remarkable as well. Both of them are in Congress, and they are just remarkable when they get in front of the camera, or when they're in any of their conferences or their committees.
You
say this, I'm just asking a question.
You said a number of things. I just addressed one of them about loans. Mm-hmm. In 1965, Barack Obama, who was in private practice, joined a bunch of other lawyers to file a class action lawsuit against Citicorp, which is headquartered here in New York. 186 black people were applying for loans for mortgages and didn't get them. And they accused Citicorp of engaging in racism. Mm-hmm. Citicorp said, no, it's not racism. You have poor credit scores, and we want to make sure we get our money back. Obama joined a bunch of other lawyers, and they sued Citicorp in a class action lawsuit. And Citicorp said, okay, to hell with it. Gave them all loans. And they followed them all up. Daily Caller did a few years later. Almost all of them lost their homes. Several of them filed for bankruptcy. One of them even said, when you don't qualify for a loan, maybe we shouldn't get a loan. Well, duh. It wasn't true that black people were not getting loans. Plus, there are all sorts of black-owned community banks around the country, and it turns out the turn-down rate when you apply for a loan at a community bank was even higher, because they had less capital and they couldn't afford to loan money to risky people. It is just not the case that the reason for the plight of the black community is because people were not lending money to them.
So now we've got the DJ involved. Now, notice that no one addresses the issue of poor credit scores, right? When we're talking about accountability and responsibility, these things cannot be ignored. But instead of the accountability aspect, they attempt to blame circumstances or people, or again, here we go with the system. And then, of course, when all of that doesn't go well, then they throw out the race card, and then that comes out again, and that's always the reason. But actually, it's much more simple than that, and that's the lack of accountability and responsibility. Now, you'll notice, here's another shtick that these people like to do, is that, and when I say these people, I'm talking about people that will not take accountability and responsibility, right? That their shtick is, okay, well, are we having a conversation? Are we going to have a back and forth? If we're not going to have a back and forth, we can't have okay. You're whining and you're crying and you're a victim, blah, blah, blah. It's just another tactic of insult which often will trigger the emotions in a person like Elder or someone else, and then off they go. And then the entire conversation will get derailed. This happens quite often. If you ever watch that show on Fox called The Five, that happens a lot. And when you watch a lot of other pundits, when they're interviewing people, they'll do this, which they don't want to address something. So then they use a tactic like this, which then triggers the other person, because the other person then has an emotion about the fact that they can't be heard, and they're not being able to say what it is that they want to say. This is one of the things that is really remarkable to watch about Trump, because he doesn't care. He will keep talking, and he will often say something several times in a row in various ways. And what is the reason for that? Because of these tactics that you're watching and listening to right now, because these people want to be dismissive, and he just won't have it. And so as a result, he manages it the way that he enjoys handling it.
End up in jail when they still had fathers. The Trumps and the Giuliani. I'm just asking the question. Like, how did they end up in jail?
Because some people commit crimes.
No, sir. Stop. My apologies for interrupting you earlier. I just couldn't stomach the answer that I knew you were going to say.
Couldn't stomach the answer?
Yeah, I couldn't stomach, because your actual answer to Trump being what was happening to him with the indictments, you actually said that the system was doing it. You said there was a two-tier system. This is your words.
That's right.
That it was a two-tier system. So when it came to Trump, all of a sudden you now believe in this systematic thing that's happening to Trump. But then when it happens to black people,
but it's not about race. It's not about race.
I didn't ask you that. I asked you, remember I made it easy for you and I took race out of it. Remember I said, I'm just talking about the system. I'm just talking about the system.
If you want to ask me whether I believe Donald Trump is being treated the same way as Joe Biden and is being treated the same way as Hillary Clinton, all of these people are white. All these people are white. There's a double standard.
Well, Mr. Elder, you didn't hear my question.
You said that
you didn't hear my question.
You said some people commit crimes. So you do believe that Trump, Giuliani, they committed a crime?
I don't know.
But you just said some people commit crimes.
I said some people committed a crime. I didn't say Donald Trump committed a crime. If you ask me specifically whether I believe Donald Trump committed a crime, I don't.
I don't. Specifically about those people and why they ended up in jail, and they all got fathers.
Well, Donald Trump is not in jail.
Oh, he got indicted.
Yeah, he got indicted. That's a far cry from being in jail.
Why did he get indicted?
Well, he got arrested, is what I'm saying. He's going to get arrested.
He got indicted, in my opinion, because the DOJ has a double standard. They let Hillary pass, for example. She clearly violated the Espionage Act by having an unsecured server in her basement. She paid for the Steele dossier. She destroyed 30,000 emails that were under subpoena, and she got a wrist slap. And Donald Trump is now being indicted, I think, for the fourth time. It's unfair.
Right.
Black people have been telling y'all how corrupt the FBI is for a long time.
And the FBI has been corrupt. There was COINTEL, the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover also wiretapped MLK under Robert Kennedy, a Democrat Attorney General, Malcolm X, lots of things. Right. And I find it interesting how the same people who criticize the FBI historically are now defending the FBI because they're going after Donald Trump.
And again, here we go with more insults, right? I can't stomach. And if you noticed, even Elder caught that, and he kind of said something under his breath, I can't stomach. So remember, I made it easier for you, another insult to which most people will want to defend themselves. She's obviously making some insult about, his intelligence and, I was trying to make it easier for you. Again, these are just tactics that people like herself use, and they use them often. And the whole thing is they want to distract from what the actual conversation is. And then notice how they kept misquoting Elder. And basically the reason why they kept misquoting him, because they would say, well, you said such and such. He's like, no, I did not say that. I said X, Y, and Z. That's going to come up in a second. And it'll be kind of an interesting moment, because I think it's very telling about how they are so ideologically bound that they can't hear the reality.
It's basically the same thing that was in the advanced placement African-American courses. And now because it's in that, all of a sudden the governor is accused of somehow defending slavery. He's not doing anything of the sort.
What did you think about that?
Well, sir, you were actually one that defended slavery. In your comments, you said that, like it or not, slavery was legal in response to reparations. So it's you that was defending slavery, correct?
Defending it and saying that it's illegal are two very different things. Slavery,
that was your response.
slavery. Unfortunately,
that was your response. That was your response into if reparations should happen. So your response to that was, like it or not, slavery was legal, and one would think that was a defense on those who were asking.
Well, you would think it was a defense, but it is not a defense.
So in that quick soundbite, Larry Elder has a very clear mind. When you have a healthy state of mind, you can start to hear these things that people are trying to do emotionally. Again, they're like little emotional Molotov cocktails. They want to throw it into the conversation and then get people gaslit and off into another direction. But he was very capable of being able to succinctly say, you said that, I did not say that. And yet it was interesting. She never went back and said, you're correct. I have it misquoted incorrectly. You did say this and you didn't say that. Again, it's just another tactic.
That's what I'm saying. There just seems to be a double standard on you and the system, not wanting to be accountable for a system that Black people are not in charge of, by the way, of not wanting to hold both sides accountable when it comes to the system.
Do I believe Hillary was treated differently and Joe Biden treated differently than Donald Trump is being treated? Yes, I do. Is that an indictment about whether or not America is systemically racist? No, it is not. Those are two different things. Yes,
you're trying to merge the two, but they're two totally different things.
I agree with you. They're two different things. We're agreeing. We're agreeing. They're two different things. We're agreeing.
No, we're agreeing to two different things. We're not agreeing that there's not systematic racism because we're not in charge of the system, sir. In case you
all right. Can we?
Black people have never been in charge of any system.
Well,
we're not
actually, we have been. Take Baltimore.
No, we've never been in charge of any system. May I finish? Tell me, what financial system are Black people in charge of? What healthcare system are Black people in charge of? What government system are Black people in charge of?
I'm about ready to tell you.
What prison system are Black people in charge?
I'm about ready to tell you.
I'm not talking about mayors. I already know that talking point, sir. I go on Fox News all the time as well. So let's not go there with that. I said, what system have we created? Have we implemented that we have been in charge of? Name one.
Okay, so her ranting goes on and on. So, all right, so she doesn't seem to think that someone who gets elected and is doing a job in part of a system known as our republic is a system that's been created by what she's saying is by Black people. Now, Larry goes on to kind of enumerate all the people that are in charge of things that are Black, and they're in charge. She comes back and says, no. What is it that we have created and that we run it? It's like, okay, so you didn't create the republic. Okay, all right, I get you. Okay, so then she says, what kind of financial system? Well, my question is, how do you manage your finances at home? Because that's a system. That's what you create. You are one of millions of people, billions of people around the world who are Black, who are creating a system. What kind of system is that? What kind of system do you create? What does your community think about finances? How are they responsible and accountable for finances? Oh, well, what about our healthcare system? Okay, what about the healthcare system? What kind of healthcare system do you and your family and your community, your Black community, since you keep bringing it up, what are you creating for yourselves? What is it that you're telling your family, your children, your siblings, your extended family, your community? I mean, yeah, we can keep going. Government, okay, what are your standards that you set for yourself and your family? Because running a family is like running a government, right? It's your own personal little government. How are you doing that? How are you setting standards? When do you talk about accountability? Do you even understand what accountability is? What about responsibility of your choice? Do you even understand what responsibility of your choice is? And then she says something about, the prison that we're being in charge of. I'm sorry, what kind of a person is thinking that it wants to boast about being in charge of a prison? A prison for what? For your own people? For your own community? What kind of thought process is that? This is a diseased thought process for which no accountability or responsibility is addressed. She never brings up anything of ownership of what the Black community may or may not have done historically. And The thing that nobody wants to talk about, and I'm going to drop this particular little truth bomb, is how have they contributed to it? Because they don't want to take ownership of that. Okay, I understand whatever your thing is about systems, and you think everything is systemic racism, and apparently so does Charlemagne. Okay, but how have you contributed to your own unhappiness in this situation? Because I can tell you one thing right off the bat is one of the ways that you contribute to your own unhappiness is by not developing personal accountability and responsibility. She keeps going back to, what kind of system are we in charge of? The system of yourself, your family, your community, and how's that going for you?
All right. Anything else, Tess?
Well, I just a simple question. Have the Republicans done anything that you disagree with, just out of curiosity?
Again, it's just another tactic of distraction. She wants to focus on other people rather than focusing on herself. She wants to focus on other systems rather than focusing on her own system.
Right, but sir, this is where and we can just agree to disagree, because you're mixing race relations and voters, what voters decided to do, who might just be very good people that decided to elect a black man, confusing with institutional system racism. And those are just two totally different things. And it's okay if we just agree to disagree.
So again, this is just more languaging of something in an attempt to avoid accountability and responsibility. People will always say that, well, we can agree to disagree. No, we're not disagreeing about facts. Facts are evidence and truth and reality. Yours is an emotion that you want to try to use that as a fact. A lot of people try to do that. They will try to use their emotions as a fact. Okay, it may be a fact that you feel that way, but it does not necessarily mean that it is reality. And why is it not reality? Because reality is void of emotion. It is simply the observation of what is happening in front of you. And she does not command that in any way, shape, or form. She's very angry. If you notice that, look at her. She's just very angry throughout the entire interview, which I found kind of entertaining.
A lot of people, of course, make mistakes, yes. Okay. And I think that people should deal with the consequences of their actions. And if you let people know there are consequences to their actions, it will inform their actions and make them behave more responsibly. Anytime you allow bad behavior to continue, you're going to get more bad behavior.
And I think we will leave it on that positive note. Hey, thanks so much for joining me this weekend. I hope you enjoyed this series that we were doing. We'll do a lot more of them this summer. If you did get anything out of it, I hope you'll share it with your family and friends. You never know how it might help them in their discovery and in their awakening. If you'd like to hit that like button, I'd be grateful. And if you'd like to subscribe, you can do so down below with that link. My book is at lulu.com. Let each care for self, and all will be cared for.